Howdy. Welcome back to Dion Talk. A lot of us learn how to invest over a period of time by finding somebody who's done what we want to do and then trying to mimic it. The right way to find a mentor is to learn something about a subject and then let them build on that. But most people that we interact with will not be successful. They will have to work until they're over 70. They will be a part of the 99% who save for retirement and hope that Social Security is there when it happens. If 99% of the people we interact with aren't millionaires, how good is the advice that we're getting? So what I have today is two friends. I have Michael Zuber from One Rental at a Time and Matt, the LumberJack landlord. I would like them, two investors who've reached financial freedom and have a, not that you're old, lifetime of investing knowledge, to share with my audience the worst investing advice you've heard. Because what I've experienced is when somebody comes to me and starts working, they say something like, my uncle said, and then they follow it up with something horrible. So let's start with Mike. Can you go through just a couple of the things that you've heard people you're working with or advice you've heard yourself that would have stopped you in your tracks or stopped that investor from success?
Yeah. So, again, I have a YouTube channel, a book, an active group. So I can spot a Dave Ramsey fan a mile away. They come to me and they're talking about, basically when people get attracted to one rental at a time, they see rental units being financial freedom. They usually come to me after they got their first rental property and they're struggling. They're like, they never say it by name, but basically I'm a Dave Ramsey fan and I got to pay off this unit before I could buy another one. And they're like, how'd you do it? And I'm like, well, Dave Ramsey has this place. If you have a negative net worth, if you have credit cards and things of that nature, go nuts. But if you're looking to become financially free via real estate, via cash flow, one rental at a time, his advice is perhaps the most moronic and dangerous and ill-conceived out there. There is such thing as good debt. You can create a positive yield or what's positive carry. So you can make 8% and pay 3%. You got to be conservative. You got to do 30-year debt. Don't be like Dave Ramsey and have 90-day debt and get caught and go bankrupt. But there is a right way to do it. So if you are a Dave Ramsey fan and you've bought your first rental and you read my book and you go, how'd you go from 1 to 2 to 10 to 20 to more and more? I didn't pay them off. In fact, I recycled capital. I recycled capital so many times, I don't have any of my own money in the deals. So I'm sorry. The answer to my question was more debt, but good debt. So yeah, the most dangerous advice, at least for real estate investors, is you must pay off a rental before you buy the next one. Because at best, most people across the country, by the time they're 60, will have 2, maybe 3. And I don't know about you, but I couldn't retire on 2 or 3.
So I am active in a lot of Facebook groups, trying to help people answer questions. And the BiggerPockets community is very open and they understand there are multiple ways to invest and all strategies. If thought about correctly, most strategies can work. The Choose FI community, it's really hard to post in there because the moderators pounce on me and pretty much delete everything I've ever said, even if it's just a motivational post. But any Dave Ramsey group, we are a pariah. We couldn't comment in those groups. We would be kicked out because...
It's okay. I would rather be retired at 45 than 75.
Correct. And if you're Dave Ramsey and you're making millions of dollars every year on your broadcasting system, it makes sense to buy some rentals in all cash. You've got to put the money somewhere. And you don't care if you're not gaining appreciation on multiples of what you invested. And he doesn't point out that his hard money loans were 90 days and he failed because of that. So I definitely agree. Debt is powerful. This right here is one of my favorite videos, why I wish I had more debt, because as long as the return scales with the amount of good debt, there's no limit to the amount of debt that I would like to have. And Matt, tell me some of the worst advice that you've experienced.
Worst advice. So my favorite one was, you'll never do anything more than live paycheck to paycheck if you don't go to college.
Oh, like that one.
Yeah. Suck it. Yeah.
The ninth
And I
grade
mean that-
dropout
and
comes through.
Yeah, and I mean that in the nicest possible way. So yeah, so I mean, I think so that advice was coming from that person. What it did was that put a nice chip on my shoulder. It still lives here, but it also helped me understand how people give advice. They give advice based only on their experience, largely speaking, and very few people are introspective and retrospective, both enough to look at a situation and say, how could I have done that differently? How could I have done that better? And oh, if I had done that better, then I would have gotten this much further in it. So a lot of people make those decisions. Like Mike and I, we don't like the stock market, because we've both gotten, our comeuppance in the stock market. And it's to say that, do plenty of other people get plenty wealthy off the stock market? Yep, absolutely they do. And so for me, I won't speak for Mike, but for me, I wanted a little bit more of a building block foundational approach to how I was going to build my wealth, and something where even in 08, even the worst year that we possibly had, pricing still was only, down 15%. And there's no stock in the world that its worst year was only down 15%. Like they just take much bigger dives and much bigger dips. And the other thing that I love is the annuity that it continues to pay me. So that was probably the worst advice that I got. And then the worst investing advice that I got, be extremely diversified.
That's the one I was going to say next. Yes.
Nice. So at least you guys agree on that.
Charlie Munger said it best. He goes, those that are really diversified aren't really good investors.
Yeah. It's the know nothing investor. That was his exact quote. And I
Yeah.
think that was from 1995.
Yeah.
Charlie Munger, if you don't know who he is, he's Warren Buffett's partner in Berkshire Hathaway. They're up on stage. He looked like he was 90 20 years ago, right? So I don't know, it must be 150 now.
He's like 100. Yeah, he's like 97 now, but he still looks like I said.
Yeah. And he was talking about diversification, and he's making Warren Buffett uncomfortable, because Warren Buffett's the guy on CNBC all the time, diversified. And Charlie's just sitting there going, diversification is for the know nothing investor.
Beautiful.
If you don't know anything, diversify. But if you get really good, because his point was, yeah, I've had several opportunities in my career where more than 75% of my net worth was on one bet. And Buffett lost it. He's like, no, don't do that. Don't tell everybody that. They're going to crush themselves. And he's like, no, diversification is for the know nothing investor.
So good.
To cover the two things that we're talking about now, people being told you have to go to college or your life is over. Where we suffer as a country is that high schools, and this is something I learned from my daughter's high school principal, was the high school receives funding based on how many college applicants that high school has. Not how many go to college, not how many graduate, but how many apply to go to college. So Matt, you dropped out in the ninth grade. Some other people go through high school, but in that amount of time when they're in high school, they're constantly told you have to go to college because the high school wants to get the funding that comes from those applications.
Sure.
And not that high school or college is good or bad, but that's all of the information we're given is you have to go to college. And with that, 15% of high school graduates continue on to a college degree. So if we took out the constant, you have to go to college, imagine how small the number of people that actually went to college would be. And the diversification, it is possible to diversify in an asset class.
For sure.
Absolutely.
I keep my properties at least 10 miles apart. So I prefer the 2 to 4 units instead of a 30 unit where all my tenants are in one spot. I diversify my tenant base. I have about 1/3 military, 1/3 Section 8, and 1/3 working or retired. And every time I bring this up in the comments, people will attack me and say that's discrimination. You can't do that. And you're right. I can't run an ad that says military only, but I can advertise on base, and I can call the housing authority and say I have a unit available. So how I advertise is going to dictate, for the most part, who gets into the unit. So that diversification, people tell you to be diversified. So people set up this amount for saving and retirement accounts, this much for investing, this much for, and you're so spread out that none of them have the chance to have a good enough return to put you far enough ahead to reach financial freedom. So like you said, some people invest in stocks successfully. And if they take the time to learn the asset class, absolutely, that should be the one they focus on. Some people get into real estate, and there's so many ways to do that. But once you have a large portfolio and you have the cash flow that is multiples what it will cost you to live, then it makes sense to take a percentage for crypto and a percentage for metals and a percentage for,
That's right.
you diversify once you're there. You don't diversify to get there.
Correct.
Right. 100%.
I think the worst advice I've ever received in my entire life was be yourself.
Huh?
And that's what I was hoping your response would be, because
I like you, Dion. Why is that bad advice?
myself was born poor with a scarcity mindset
Oh.
and uneducated. We all start uneducated.
There you
And that
go.
doesn't mean open a book and educate yourself. It could be the School of Hard Knocks that Matt went to. It could be learning the investing strategy that gets you to freedom. It could be going to college, developing an actual skill where the degree applies to it, not the fine arts degree where you then complain that you can't make enough money. It could be learning a trade. And this is something that I wish my daughter had waited to say this, because she still had 2 years of school left. But when I was talking to her principal and we were talking about everything here at this high school says go to college. I run a CDL school. How come there's no trade schools here? There's no welding, no HVAC, no CDL. And the principal looked at my daughter and says, well, don't you want to go to college to be successful? And she shouldn't have said this, but she said, no, I'm going to get a CDL from my dad's school and I'm going to make twice what you do.
I love her.
I love her too. But she still had 2 years to go there.
Oh, yes.
Graduated, did fine. He laughed. He took it well.
That could
And-
have went real bad.
and now she is an amazing, successful person. So worked out great.
That's awesome.
I can't thank you both enough for sharing this. I would like to follow up in one of our future ones to do best advice, of course. Mike, if somebody wants to get a hold of you and ask you questions, what's the best way to do that?
I go to Google search bar and type in one rental at a time. You should see a YouTube channel, Instagram, book, all that good stuff.
Okay. And Matt, we fine fellows are together on Thursdays on One Rental at a Time. But if they want to get to you and ask you some questions, how can they find you?
LumberJackLandlord.com, LumberJack Landlord on YouTube, and my live stream 11 a.m. on Sunday that Mike won't be able to attend because he's going to be doing interviews with somebody else.
That's right.
I'm definitely going to try to be there.
I would love it.
Someday I'm going to do a live stream, but with my memory. But not today.
Not today.
Not today. Thank you for that. Awesome. Thank you both. Until my next video, thanks for coming to my Dion talk.
We're sorry, the number you have dialed is not in service at this time.
Awesome. Cool.
Very cool.
That'll be a good one.
You need to stop recording.
So we can talk like humans. For Matt, some of the people that actually go to the 4 years of high school and even waste that amount of time.
We're not calling hold on. We're not calling high school graduation a bad thing.
Okay.
We're
I'll
not
back that
calling
up and
no.
edit that out.
Yeah,
So
it's fine.
Matt,
You
you
can leave it
dropped
there,
out
but
in
that's
the
not what I'm
ninth
saying.
I'll clean it up a little bit.